Welcome to The Explainer. You know, humanity has actually been trying to medically categorize depression for over 2,000 years. It's wild to think about. Today, we're investigating one of the most widespread yet fundamentally misunderstood conditions in human history. We're going to look at the hard medical, historical, and biological data to answer a question that, surprisingly, still gets asked all the time today.
It's a question I bet you've heard, or hey, maybe you've even wondered it yourself. In our society, it is incredibly common to hear people just completely dismiss depression. Some people think it's just a personality trait or simply a bout of the blues that someone can just, choose to ignore. And I want to validate that. This societal misconception is literally everywhere. But here is the really exciting part. Modern science, brain imaging, and centuries of medical history have definitively solved this mystery. It is not a choice, and it is for sure not just a bad mood.
The Mayo Clinic puts it perfectly. They state, depression isn't a weakness, and you can't simply snap out of it. Okay, let's dive into this. Major depressive disorder is a thoroughly recognized, highly researched medical condition, and it's not rare either. According to clinical data, roughly 1 in 6 people will experience a major depressive episode at some point in their lifetime. 1 in 6. It affects people across all ages, biological sexes, and backgrounds. But how exactly did we arrive at this clear medical consensus?
Section 1. A centuries-old history.
So, looking back, there is this fascinating evolution of medical thought from the 1780s through the 1880s. Initially, back in the 1780s, early physicians like William Cullen and Philippe Pinel actually defined what they called melancholia as a disorder of the intellect. Essentially, they thought of it as a failure to think properly, which, honestly, sounds pretty wild to us now. But as medical observation improved into the 1850s, pioneers like Joseph Ghislain started noting cases of melancholia without any delusions. They began to realize the core issue wasn't actually an intellectual failure at all. By the 1860s and into the 1880s, influential psychiatrists like Emil Kraepelin definitively reclassified it. They concluded that this was a primary condition of mood and that any altered thinking was actually just a symptom of that mood, not the other way around.
Section 2. Diagnosing the disorder. This brilliantly illustrates the hard distinction between a normal human emotion and a medical disorder. On the one side, we have normal sadness. These are feelings that everyone experiences from time to time due to stress or personal loss. But on the other side, we have a DSM-5 major depressive episode. To meet this strict clinical threshold, a person must experience symptoms that cause clinically significant distress or impairment in their social and occupational functioning. And crucially, these symptoms must be persistent for at least 2 full weeks. It's a complete, systemic change in how a person thinks, feels, and acts. Furthermore, the symptoms are far, far more than just emotional. Just take a look at this list. Yes, we see persistent sadness and emptiness, but we also see severe physical symptoms, sleep disturbances like insomnia or oversleeping, profound physical tiredness, slowed body movements, and even totally unexplained physical problems like back pain or headaches. This proves that depression fundamentally alters the body's energy and functionality. It is a whole-body medical condition, not just a state of mind.
Section 3. Inside the depressed brain. So if it's a physical condition, we should be able to see it, right? Well, to see it, we rely on an incredibly advanced field called connectomics. Let's see how this builds our understanding. Think of connectomics kind of like mapping a major city's electrical grid. By mapping the human connectome, researchers can actually physically see where the wires cross, where they integrate information, and exactly where those connections break or short circuit during a depressive episode. Now, the currency running through this electrical grid are neurotransmitters. These are naturally occurring chemical messengers that transmit signals across the gaps, or synapses, between our brain cells. You've likely heard of serotonin regulating sleep and mood, or dopamine driving our motivation. Well, in depression, the production and uptake of these exact chemicals physically short circuits. This disruption literally breaks the brain's ability to maintain mood stability. And we can actually see what this short circuit looks like on a brain scan. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the disrupted physical connectivity you can see highlighted here. The brain heavily relies on a hub called the default mode network to transfer information. In a depressed brain, the very wiring of this hub is physically altered, definitively proving the network itself is misfiring.
But the condition goes way beyond just temporary misfires. It literally causes structural shrinking or atrophy in areas of the brain that process and regulate our emotions, like the hippocampus. Studies even show that variations in specific genetic traits, like the 5-HTT gene, combined with severe early life stress, can literally damage the integrity of the brain's white matter. This isn't a mindset. It is a physical rewiring of the brain. The illness is structural. It is absolutely not a choice.
Section 4. A global health crisis. 300 million. According to estimates by the World Health Organization, the total number of people globally living with depression exceeded 300 million back in 2015. To put that into perspective for a second, that is nearly the entire population of the United States, all navigating this structural brain disorder.
And because of the severe physical and emotional impairment we discussed earlier, depression is ranked by the WHO as the single largest contributor to non-fatal health loss on the planet. It is responsible for roughly 7.5% of all global disability. This isn't just an individual struggle, guys. It represents a massive, tangible impact on families, on workplaces, and on entire global economies.
So, the absolutely crucial point is this. When a society dismisses depression as just a bad mood, people don't get the medical help they so desperately need. And leaving this physical, neurological condition untreated carries fatal, real-world consequences. Depression is the major contributor to the nearly 800,000 suicide deaths that occur every single year. It is a very real disease with very real stakes.
We've seen the timeline of medical history, the strict diagnostic criteria, the staggering global statistics, and the undeniable images of altered brain networks. The biological reality is right there on the scans. The evidence is bulletproof, mapped right into our very brain's wiring. So knowing all of this, how will you use this science to shatter the stigma tomorrow? It is well past time we treat depression with the exact same seriousness as any other major medical condition. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. I'll see you next time.